So if we could pray it in real quick, I'll go ahead and get started. Father, thank you so much for these just amazing mentors and just the wisdom that they just want to pour out on us so freely. So I pray, Father, that you just open our minds and open our hearts, Father, to addition to all the business and all of the economics and everything that we can learn, Father, but also to just how the way that Mark really does keep in contact with your heart, Father. So I just pray that you would give us listening ears and watchful eyes for this next half hour. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Alrighty. Amen. So, Mark, you work for Elliott Wave International, which is, I'm sure, having an interesting time right now. Could you explain exactly like what Elliott Wave International is?
So the idea behind the Elliott Wave methodology is that it was discovered by a guy named Ralph Nelson Elliott back in the 1920s, and he got sick with tuberculosis. So he was sitting on his porch in the sun recuperating in San Francisco. He was an accountant, and as only an accountant would do, he's going through, for relaxation, he's going through price charts of the markets, and he's just kind of flipping through these price charts. And he noticed that the market seemed to move in patterns. And he began to dig in and try to determine exactly what these patterns were. And he ended up putting together, kind of codifying it through a series of letters he wrote to people who were big Wall Street people at the time. And he started trading on that information and started doing very well. And he wrote a small book that didn't do much, and then he died. And the people that he interacted with on Wall Street recognized this as something important, and there would be a sort of like every generation subsequently would have one or two people who were sort of the Elliott people, the people who understood Elliott, and they would use it themselves, and they'd talk to each other about it, write back and forth about it, and so forth, until my boss in the 1970s was working for Merrill Lynch in New York, and he was going through, you guys know what microfiche is? Does anybody know what that term is? Microfiche? Well, it's how you used to do research. You'd go to this big terminal. It's like a computer, except there were no computers. And it's kind of like Etch-a-Sketch. Everything was captured on film, analog film, and you would move the dials and you'd be able to read old newspapers this way. And it was sort of white on blue. I remember this from my days as a student way back before, so you wouldn't, there was no such thing as Google, obviously. So anyway, Bob came across on microfiche some of these old letters just buried in the New York library. And he was fascinated by it. He began to use this information himself in his analysis, and ended up writing a book with that prior generation's top Elliott guy named A.J. Frost. And this book is called The Elliott Wave Principle, Key to Market Behavior. And it's a legendary book now on for traders all over the world. Basically what it says is that the markets move in patterns regardless of what's happening outside. So whatever market you're looking at, oil, the price of oil is not dependent on interest rates. Interest rates are not dependent on stocks or the Fed. There's some radical things in here. Stocks don't move because of a coronavirus or because of wars. They move because their pattern declares that they must move. And the pattern itself comes from it's a phenomenon that happens in society. When groups of people get together, they have a mood, a group mood. They're unconscious. It's unconscious. They don't recognize it. They don't realize it. And it is impelling them to make decisions based on that mood. So they swing from excessive optimism to excessive pessimism. And on top of that, for you math geeks out there, I see Tyler, he already knows all this. Tyler should be given this explanation, not me. But it's fractal. So it's like nested Russian dolls. Each pattern sits inside of another pattern. So it sounds very complicated. I'm probably making it more complicated than it is, but that's what Elliott Wave principle is. And it states that these patterns in the markets are not independent of the rest of society. They are a result of society. So You will see in bull markets, you'll see that people like Disney movies and they drive fast cars and they travel a lot. And music is very, at a peak, you'll see bubblegum type music coming to the fore. And in bear markets, you see the opposite. Cars get heavy and windows get small and everybody's about protection. And that's because, and the movies, horror movies become really super popular in bear markets. And that's not because the market drives them to that point, but because their mood is the source of both of those groups of activities. Wars happen at the bottom of major bear markets because people are, ticked and angry and they go to war with each other. At the top of bull markets, you see countries come together and they form major agreements. The European Union codifies at the end of 2000, which is, the top of a big bear market. And then it falls apart during bear markets.
Wow. Yeah. That's fascinating. So, because even I got on your website, and the headline on your website right now is "No, we are not in uncharted territory." So I think that really speaks to like the Elliott wave principle of nothing is new. There's nothing new under the sun.
Yeah, that's right.
So even in conversations I've had with you in the past, something you do really well is you always loop back to where's the kingdom in this. So I was just curious. I read on LinkedIn. I think your company has about 70 people. So obviously there's ministry there, but how does discipleship and how does your faith in general play into your daily, like your work, but also just like with your company?
Yeah, the big thing for me is, listening prayer. And I'm where I am with my job because of that. I mean, I haven't left where I'm working. I'm called to that place. And, I really try to, I don't do this all the time, but I try to at least once a day commit to some time with God to really listen. And everything else for me comes out of that, really. So discipleship opportunities come out of that. Discussions with my boss come out of that. He's an atheist, brilliant guy, wonderful person, very generous, but an atheist. And so for me, it comes from listening prayer. It's the way I get intimate with the Lord. It's how I know what I'm supposed to do, like in life, from purpose down to the next couple of minutes. And I actually wanted to talk about that during the teaching session.
Yeah, well, we're right there. So
yeah, the timing is
perfect timing.
The timing is right. So yeah, as I was praying this morning, doing listening prayer, I sensed that I should talk to people about listening prayer. And I know you guys are familiar with it, very familiar with it. Seth's book was a landmark book for probably many of you. It was for me. So just to kind of get an idea of where everybody is, how many people, like, would you say you do quiet listening prayer where you stop and ask God questions